Hey, here we are going live. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to be talking with Emily Geller, who is an opera singer. And she recently had her baby in the car while I was moving. So Emily's going to be here with us to share her car birth story. And this is a different way of doing some storytelling because we can never get to enough of the stories that we want to get to. And so we're going to be doing this way today. And it's exciting that people are joining us. And Emily just jumped on, so I'm going to bring her on. Hey, Emily. And I think we're being connected. Let's see. There you are. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good.
So good to see you and so happy to have you here, joining me in this new way of telling stories, doing it through a live instead of in the podcast. Um, and I can see people are starting to join us. So I wanted to give them a few, little seconds here. We're just on time so that more you can see people are just like flocking. Yay, welcome everybody. Welcome, Michaela, Rox. Hey, how's it going? Um, why don't Yeah, so for everybody watching, this is a new way of doing stories for Birthful. Every so often, I'm going to see about doing these live and saving it. And I have the pleasure of having Emily Geller here today to share her story. So how long ago was it? It's been weeks. We're talking like so recent.
Yeah. Tomorrow my daughter will be 4 weeks.
Wow, that goes by quickly. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Yeah, yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you identify?
sure. So my name is Emily Geller, and I live in Westchester in New York. Um, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm an opera singer. And I just had my second baby, so I have a almost 3-year-old son, and then my daughter is going to be 4 weeks tomorrow.
Hmm. I have so many questions for you because the whole thing about being an opera singer, I'm really excited to get to. You had given hints as to how being an opera singer helped you with this fast, precipitous birth. So I do want to get to that. But before we do that, why don't you tell us briefly about your first birth and what happened there?
Sure. So I was always planning for an unmedicated vaginal birth, and I was working with midwives, and I had a doula. I did a lot of research, and I was really planning that for my first birth. I was away on a gig singing in Florida, and so I missed a couple of prenatal appointments where I think they normally would have checked positioning. And I came back at 34 weeks and found out that my son was breech, um, which was devastating. But I thought, okay, I'll find a vaginal breech provider and, or we'll try to get him to flip and it'll be fine. Um, but unfortunately, I did everything I could to get him to flip, name something, I did it. And he wasn't flipping. And looking back, he was in that position the whole time. Um, and I was frantically trying to find a breech provider, and I couldn't. Like anyone that did do breech, the hospital put a ban on it. Doctors that used to do breech either retired. I was due right around Labor Day, so even if there was someone available, they were on vacation and they wouldn't take me that far into the pregnancy. Um, there was one person that was available, but he only worked 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. So if I gave birth anytime, not during business hours, it was an automatic C-section. Just there was, you know, curveballs like every step of the way. It was exhausting, mentally exhausting, and
I
you
can
know,
only imagine, and that is so frustrating. And Val said that that happened to her for her first as well. And that happened to me as well. My baby was breech the whole time. And at 37 weeks, though I did have an ECV, unfortunately, I got it. Like you say, it's the luck of the draw of, do you have a provider that's comfortable doing this, knowledgeable about doing it, and is going to, be available.
Yeah.
And that just narrows your choices so much.
Yeah. And I think, I was looking at multiple providers. I was asking every doula, ICANN chapters, Breach Without Borders, Coalition for Breech Birth on Facebook. Like, I was really digging deep, and I couldn't find anyone. I think at the time I wasn't comfortable traveling super far away and giving birth. For instance, like at the farm, that wasn't something that I felt comfortable with for my first. So that just really limited my options. So I ended up with, as time was ticking on and the ECV failed, and it just looked like my son was not going to turn. At that point, I decided to do a planned C-section, which was devastating, but I felt like, I could go into labor at any moment. And if I'm going to have a C-section, I want it to be the best C-section that I could possibly have. So I, being type A, I planned out everything with my C-section, and I had one of the first gentle C-sections at the hospital. So I was planning on giving birth at the birthing center, but then I transferred to the hospital once I did the C-section.
What were some of those things in your plan to make it a gentle C-section, or the best ever possible C-section, where you still felt you were in control and also in charge, not in control, because not, but like being heard and really having a really great experience.
Yeah, totally. So some things that I did was I had a clear drape. I had all the EKG leads on my back, and I was completely naked, so I didn't have any kind of like fabric on me. The bar separating with the clear drape, I asked them to put it as low as possible, so I had as much room on my chest as possible. When my son was born, I asked them if they could do it slowly, so more of a vaginal squeeze, although he came out butt first, so I don't know if that mattered or not, but we did that. And then
I mean, sure, it would have been just to say like that kind of same butt squeeze if it was vaginal. So yeah.
And the OB milked the umbilical cord. We had 90 seconds of delayed cord clamping, and then they brought my son over to me, and he was on my chest, doing skin to skin the whole time. And they just brought over warm blankets and put it over us, so he wasn't, wrapped up or anything, like cheek to cheek, like he was just straight on me, which was nice. And we had my choice of music playing. I had classical guitar music playing. My husband had some lavender oil on his wrist, so I was like smelling that during the procedure. And everyone, I asked that all of the staff in the room, if they have to talk, just keep it strictly about the surgery and what's happening. I didn't want people chatting about what they're going to do for lunch or, their dinner plans or anything like that. I wanted everything to be calm and focused on the birth. We also did vaginal seeding with my son, as well as I brought frozen colostrum with me to the hospital just in case that I wasn't expressing.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic thing to do, to bring your own colostrum. But let me ask you about the vaginal seeding, because that's such a hit and miss topic as well. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to, how did you address that conversation with your provider, and what was their reaction? How did you manage to have it done?
Yeah. So my midwives, I did have a midwife with me in the OR, which was great. But the OB and the anesthesiologist were really the people that were in charge in the room during the surgery. So I just spoke to my OB about it, and I said, I'm going to do vaginal seeding. And she just said, like, that's not something that we can do as as providers. And she was like, you do whatever it is that you want. You do you. So I had my doula was in the recovery room right outside, which was also something I had to advocate for. Normally they don't like that, but she made sure that the lights were dim, and she held my little Ziploc bag of gauze.
With your gauze. Yeah.
So she just held it. She just had it.
Okay, so it wasn't done in the OR. It was done afterwards when you went to
Yeah.
the.
So I had my son skin to skin, and then the surgery was really fast. So we went into the recovery room, and we had the gauze, and I just put it all over my chest, my breast, her face, not in her eyes, but or like around her
Like just
lips and
nose and
hands.
mouth.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Oh my goodness. Val was saying that her doctor's phone rang while her daughter was coming out.
So Val's my friend.
Oh,
um, I hope it was something incredibly important on the phone.
right? Or maybe didn't answer.
Yeah.
Um, so then you had a planned cesarean because nobody would deliver breech, and you're pregnant again. You were looking to have a VBAC, a vaginal birth after cesarean. Um, how did you, what were the most important things or more impactful things that you did to prepare for that VBAC, do you think?
Yeah. So when my son was being born and they were during the C-section, you know, the doctor knew how badly I wanted to be back at that point. So I was like, make sure it's a double closure. And I said, take pictures of my uterus. Is there anything abnormal? Like, I want, write everything down in the notes. I wanted like detailed notes saying, I didn't want anyone to say anything that I couldn't, have a VBAC. So I've been planning my VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean, since my son was born. So that, for 3 years, basically.
Well, yeah, and I can see like if you had your OB take pictures of your uterus while you were open on a table, like that is very, very, very early planning. And Dana says, good for
Yeah.
you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So this pregnancy, I think, um, before I even got pregnant, I started working with the chiropractor, a Webster certified chiropractor, and I was seeing her weekly, and she was doing dry needling and Graston technique on my C-section scar. I also went through in my early 20s major hip surgery for a hip dysplasia, something called a periacetabular osteotomy, and there's very
that's a long
niche
word.
group. I know, very niche group on Facebook that's called Pregnancy After Periacetabular Osteotomy. So I'm part of that group, and a bunch of people who have had the surgery that I had have given birth vaginally, no problem. So I thought, okay, that's fine, but there is some asymmetry in my hips. So I thought
Okay.
that with the muscles and tendons, I thought that might have tilted my uterus a little bit and might have made my son breech. So this pregnancy, I was just, I mean, who knows, but but I figured, chiropractic work, won't hurt, and if I can get things a little better aligned, so I did that. Also doing a bunch of spinning babies exercises, so never leaning back, always sitting, upright or on
No
a yoga
crossing
ball.
legs. Yeah.
No crossing legs. I didn't wear heels this entire pregnancy. Versus the last pregnancy, I was in the middle of a production, so I was wearing um, heels for that the whole time. um, and so I would say, educating myself, really just learning even more about birth and diving headfirst into that world, listening to a bunch of podcasts, including the Birthful podcast, reading lots of books, all of, the top books that people read. This pregnancy, I did read Lily Nichols' book, Real Food for Pregnancy. And
Love that book. Yeah.
so I was following that. I also, occasionally ate McDonald's and had Cold Stone. So it wasn't like, I don't want to preach that I was this like following her recommendations, like 100%.
And I think even she's like, do what you can.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
totally. Yeah. And I think I posted something on Instagram with her, and she was like, don't worry about it. I think I posted like a McFlurry or something. So I was like, it's fine. I'm taking some beef liver pills and it'll balance out. Yeah, I think a lot of it was mental preparation. So I was going to ICANN meetings, the International Cesarean Awareness Network, working through my previous birth. Because although it wasn't traumatic in the sense that you might think of a traumatic birth, for me, the process of not having a choice and not being able to feel like I could birth vaginally was very frustrating. When I felt like I was like, I can do this, I can push this baby out, like feet first, butt first, head first, like I can do it. I know I can do it. I just wanted the opportunity to. So I think working past all of those fears and really allowing myself to forgive myself for the choice of choosing a planned C-section was a lot of it. I did a good bit of meditation with the Gentle Birth app this pregnancy.
And which really wasn't a choice for you, because to make a choice, you need to have options. And your options were so limited. It was basically like, unassisted breech or a planned cesarean. That's not really choices. Yeah.
Which I think I'm now at that place. But at the time I just thought, well, I could have traveled. I could have, researched harder. I could have found someone. I could have, done XYZ, but
yeah.
I did a lot.
Problem of the system, not you particularly.
So I think the mental processing the last birth, working with a therapist, was really helpful. I mentioned the spinning babies, chiropractic work, scar work, nutrition, and then just putting together a supportive team. So working with my midwives and my doula, and just feeling very supported throughout the pregnancy.
So then, fast forward, I think it's 37 weeks. You've got your team in place, baby's looking good, positions head down, and you go to a wedding in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, so I'm in Westchester, New York. It was about 3.5 hours away. I'm 37 and 4 days. I was having some prodromal labor, but that happens, that can happen for weeks. So I wasn't too concerned. In hindsight, I should have, packed like a bag or had the car seat installed, but,
Sure.
I just thought like, we're driving distance. We're not flying anywhere. And even if I go into labor, I'll be in early labor in the car. That's fine. Like, no big deal. I was assuming that, for me, it was a first time labor, and it would be, sorry, my daughter's like,
it's like, hey, you're telling my story. I want to share too.
I know.
Hello, lovely. What's her name?
Rosemary Claire. So she's named after my mom and my husband's mom.
Very beautiful.
So I just thought like, even if I'm in early labor in the car, that's fine. No big deal. So we were at the wedding. This is my husband's cousin's wedding. It was, so wonderful to see everyone. And it was a beautiful wedding. We had a great time. We were dancing, had all of that oxytocin flowing. And, I had a little sip of wine, which I was not doing, the whole pregnancy. And I didn't do the first pregnancy at all. So, just like a fourth of a glass of wine, which was, felt like I was at a party.
But you were doing all these really oxytocin producing things, like dancing, celebrating with family, being surrounded by love and joy, not worrying about anything.
Yeah, it was great. And I just thought, this was my last hurrah before the baby's born. And it will be great. And then we'll go home and I can just nest these last couple of weeks. I'm thinking, I'll probably go 40, 41 weeks. My concern was going post-dates. And I was thinking, if I go post-dates, I'm going to have to get all these NSTs. And, I don't want anyone like doing these late-term scans and trying to, scare me with a big baby or anything like that. Even though my son was 7 pounds, 6 ounces. And, I didn't want to.
Not so big, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I thought that that's what I was going to have to worry about. We were at the wedding. I was getting a little tired. I was super pregnant. Everyone at the wedding was commenting and saying like, oh, you're going to dance that baby out. Dancing induces labor and all this stuff. And, in hindsight, it's really funny, but I was super pregnant and uncomfortable, and I was not feeling it. And I was just like, yeah, okay. But my husband and I are dancing. We're having a great time. We go back to the hotel room and we're asleep around 11:30. And at midnight, I felt like I had to pee. So I got up, and when I stood up, my water broke.
Big gush.
Yeah, it was a gush. Um, I don't know if she's hungry or not.
Give it a
She's
try, and I'll take the
she,
opportunity to ask people
yeah,
if they
sorry.
will have questions. Drop it in the chats. Yeah, you do what you need to do. Baby Rosemary comes first. Yeah, but if people have questions for Emily about her experience, drop them in the comment box. That we will definitely try to get to them. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
she may or may not be hungry. Who knows? But yeah, so my water breaks. I'm GBS negative. Fluid is clear. There's no odor. Contractions didn't start. I just thought, okay, like we're fine. I'm thinking this is going to be, first time labor. So I'm thinking around, like 16, 24 hours, I'm probably going to end up stalling, pushing stage is going to be really long. That's what I was preparing for, just because odds were that's what was going to happen, just statistically.
Right.
So I just thought, okay, let's get a little bit of sleep and then we'll leave in a couple of hours and it'll be fine. And I was texting with my friend who's here now on
Val. Yeah, yeah.
and she was like, girl, get in the car. What are you doing? And I was like, no, it's okay. We're good. We're good. Like, no big deal. It's fine. It's fine. So I try to just get some sleep, but I can't. My water just keeps leaking over and over again. And I'm laughing at some point because it's just so ridiculous. It's like so much water.
Nobody tells you. Like, I try to make a point to let people know once your water breaks, it's going to continue to come. Your baby's never going to be dry. Your body keeps making it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was also drinking a ton of water and I was trying to stay super hydrated. We didn't have really any food except for, we're at a wedding. So we got a little like goodie bag at the hotel desk of some snacks. So I'm just like eating the snacks and drinking water. And then around 3 a.m., around 3 a.m., I go to the bathroom again. And when I wipe, there's blood. And I think, oh, okay, it's my blood show. Things are progressing. I still no contractions. But I thought, okay, we should probably, pack up the room and get ready to go. And like pretty much immediately after that, my contractions started. And they were pretty intense just right off the bat. I think in hindsight, all of the prodromal labor that I was having, I don't know how dilated I was.
Right?
I think it was doing something because I remember it was a couple of nights where I was timing it and they were 15 minutes apart, 10 minutes apart, 8 minutes apart the whole night. And then it would fizzle out in the morning.
This is so good to hear because I actually have a client right now doing exactly that. And she's been at it for days and she's like so frustrated. So I was good.
Yeah, awesome. So I knew that was happening and I just kept thinking, well, this could happen for weeks, no big deal. It wasn't a little prodromal labor wasn't going to stop me from celebrating, going to this wedding. So basically, contraction started. I immediately take out the gentle birth contraction timer and I'm immediately like doubled over and swaying and like breathing through them. And I thought, oh my God, like, is this how I'm reacting in early labor? If this is early labor and I'm already having to focus and not talk through contractions, I was like, okay, I hope I can handle this because this is a lot.
Yeah.
This is intense. So my husband ran out to go get some adult diapers for the car for me since my water was leaking. He didn't want his car to get messed up, which in hindsight, again, is hilarious. But he went to go do that. I'm trying to pack everything up in between contractions. And we end up getting into the car around 4 a.m. And I'm in the front seat for a while. That's, incredibly uncomfortable, but I'm just breathing through it using the contraction timer. They're immediately, about like 3 minutes apart, a minute long, just like right off the bat.
Like good, solid labor pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. At one point I got out of the car for a second and then got into the back seat. And that was the whole time when I was in the back seat, the only position I could get into that I could literally only get into, like I couldn't move, was my head was on my toddler's car seat. And I was on the driver's side, and I had one foot on the floor and my left foot up on the seat, and I was like holding on to the bar that you put dry cleaning on, and I was up on one hip.
I'm definitely painting a mental picture, and that's a
Yeah.
really good asymmetrical pelvis shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking also with what you've said of your story of baby in a breech position before that, having a hip dysplasia.
And she was LOA, I knew as well.
Okay. So yeah, so like I'm wondering if it was so instinctual of your body, even though like that was the only position that felt good, which is such a like weird position, right? You're hanging on and one leg's up on the seat and
Yeah.
but so good. Yeah.
So I was just there, and I was kind of trapped there for a while. At this point, we still didn't call the midwives because I thought it's the middle of the night. I don't want to wake them up. I'll call them when I'm like, an hour away and just say, hey, heads up, we're coming in.
This is what we're here for. Call your doula, call your midwife.
I know. I texted the doula.
Up.
I texted the doula because I didn't want to bother her. So I thought, she'll check her text messages in the morning. I don't want to call her and wake her up in the middle of the night. I don't know how long this labor could be. I knew that it was really intense and the contractions were close together, but I also knew that it could stall out and it could slow down. Or it could just be like this for hours and hours.
Well, and I'm guessing also at that point, you are deep into going into labor land. Like your thinking brain is not very much engaged.
Yeah. I mean, my thinking brain was pretty much, when I was having the contraction, I would press the like surge timer, the contraction timer, and just listen to it. I'm relaxing my jaw. I'm just thinking, okay, relax my jaw, breathe, like slow exhales. When things got more intense, I was doing lip trills, and when things got really intense, I was doing like low moans. But that was my focus. And then at some point around, I want to say, so we got in the car at 4, and this was a little before like 5:30. I told my husband to pull over, and I stood up for the first time in a long time, and it felt so nice to just stand up. And I put my wrists on the top of his car, and that felt really nice. Just the cold, the coldness of the car.
Those little things are so, like, that's comfort measures, temperature. Like, they make people think like, oh, that's, slow breathing and some cold on your wrists how can that help? It does such wonders.
Well, when you're in a car and you have literally like 0 comfort measures, like your wrists on the top of a car, it was luxurious. I was like, wow, looking back, like how awesome would it have been to have a tub and, my doula and counter pressure and lavender oil and all my team. But it's fine. So I was dealing with it, but I remember my legs started shaking when I was outside of the car, and I was already starting to bear down and push. My body was just pushing for me. And I remember thinking, oh my God, Emily, like you can't be pushing right now. This is way too early. There's no way, first of all, that you like went through active labor and like are pushing. There's no way. You've been in labor for like an hour and a half, like in the car, there's no way. And I just thought, I'm pushing too early. I've heard of that. I'm pushing too early. I'm going to be swollen. I'm going to show up to the hospital. They're going to give me Benadryl. I'm going to be out of it. My mind just started like cascading. So I thought, I can't push. I just have to breathe through this and not push. So I willed myself back into the back seat of the car because I thought we still have to make it back. And I will say it took a lot of mental focus, because when I was in the back seat and my head was on the car seat, I was looking straight out the front window, and I could see the GPS, on the car, and it was saying, 2 hours left to go. And I remember just thinking, like, I can't, like, 2 hours, like, I can't do, like, there's no way. Like, I was like, I'm just gonna have to, like, run into traffic. Like, I can't, like, do this for another 2 hours. So I, like, let my eyes kind of haze and just, not focus. And then I just looked out the window and I just decided, like, I'm not going to look at that GPS anymore. I just have to look out the window and I just watched the sunrise. But the contractions were, you know, 3 minutes apart, 2 minutes apart. I mean, it was like they were so close together. There were like a minute and 25 seconds, like a minute and a half. I mean, they were long and strong and on top of each other. So basically I was in the back seat, and at around like 5:45-ish a.m. So it was an hour and 45 minutes since I got in the car, and about 2 hours and 45 minutes since contractions started.
Okay.
About. I was still kind of pushing and bearing down. I told my husband to pull over. I said, okay, pull over. And he said, I can't. There's nowhere, there's no shoulder on the side of the highway. And I reached down and I felt the head. So I just reached down and I said, there's a head. And he said, okay. And then like a second later, I had fetal ejection reflex and her entire body came out. And I said, there's a baby. And he looked in the rearview mirror, and I'm just like, holding this baby, like, and then I look and it's a girl, and we didn't know the gender. So that was, we found out with my son, with that, everything was planned C-section. We knew the gender, everything was by the book, planned. And for this birth, I was like, I don't want anything like that. I don't want to know, I want to be surprised. I want everything to, not feel as planned. So
here you are in a car.
Yeah.
And Dana's saying, whoa. And and Dana, actually, I've had her on the show before, and she had a precipitous birth too, similar. It was start to finish 3 hours for her second. So that's even fast. What you're describing is even fast for the definition of precipitous. Like it's an extra quick birth. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, super fast.
Baby was fine. How did that immediate postpartum happen?
Yeah. So I think, I will just say that I think, just to defend my husband, because a lot of people were saying like, why did you go to the hospital? He did ask me in the car like multiple times if I wanted to go to the hospital. And I just kept saying no, because I thought we were going to make it the whole time, and also I didn't want to
when babies are coming that quick, I find that there tends to be nothing wrong. It's the babies that are having a harder time that you got to worry about more. When they're like, I'm out of here, it's like, okay, I am generalizing, but that's my anecdotal experience for sure.
Yeah. I mean, my placenta was on my right, and she was LOA, her head was tucked and she was low. She was like pretty much engaged and ready to go. And I think with all the prodromal labor, like who knows how dilated I already was. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. I was so uncomfortable, but again, I don't know how uncomfortable can you really be? And I knew that the contractions were really intense, but again, I didn't know, could they get more intense? Could they, how much longer can this last for?
She's telling, what's your part of the story? So, and I read somewhere you had the wherewithal of when she came out, like you had some towels or something to wipe her down.
Yeah. So I took some towels from the hotel room. Sorry. Before we left, and threw them in the back. So when she was born, I rubbed her down and I put her upside down and just kind of rubbed her back and was hoping, trying to get her to stimulate her and to get her to cry. She was breathing. It was a little slow, but I did look down and the umbilical cord actually snapped.
Ooh. Okay.
So that was obviously like not planned. Sorry, I'm trying to latch her on. But
Yeah. And
so that
Kelsey, while you're figuring out latching her on, Kelsey's saying, "You're amazing, Emily." And yes, you are so
Kelsey's
amazing.
was my wedding photographer, and she's amazing. If anyone's out in California and needs a wedding photographer, she is like the best. So check out her page, definitely.
I love
Um,
that you've got all your team here rooting you on. It's
yeah.
fabulous.
Um,
So wait, so the umbilical cord snapped, which is
yes.
very unusual. What
Yes.
did you
Apparently,
do? Because that concerns me.
yes. That concerns everyone that I've told that to. They're all like I've never seen that. That doesn't happen. Really, that's not common from my understanding from people that I've spoken to.
Yeah.
So, she was breathing, but she wasn't full on like crying. So, and my husband called 911 at that point. We were, just waiting for the ambulance. But I was just keeping her skin to skin, trying to keep her warm. But the cord on her end was about 3 inches. But it clotted. There was no, like, it just clotted immediately. She wasn't bleeding out or anything. On
Because
my end, I wasn't hemorrhaging at all.
yeah, because let's clarify the concern. The concern is you've got these two blood vessels, like arteries and veins, two arteries, one vein on each side, just open. And I'm thinking, there's no clamping. Is there blood coming out? So what you're saying is Walker's jelly did its thing and liquefied and self-clamped both ends when there was no, like, somehow stopped the pulsation. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, crazy. And I've spoken to a couple of different midwives and OBs, and yeah, they're like, yeah, we've heard of that happening, but we haven't seen it in
Had
practice.
they
So
heard of, had they heard about it snapping, or had they heard about it self clamping, like snapping and not being an issue?
they've heard about cords snapping, but I think most people that I spoke to said that they didn't, that they just thought that if it snapped, there wouldn't be clotting happening. And yeah, whatever this is, there'd be lots of blood, um, and bad things. So
That's the international official sign
yeah,
for it. No.
emergency. So, yeah, it just like so I didn't feel the need to tie it because it already clotted. I mean, in hindsight, I took pictures. I ended up delivering the placenta, naturally in the ambulance about like 20 minutes later. Because the EMS worker, who's great, like they were taking selfies and we were like hanging out and taking videos in the ambulance, and because we were both fine, my daughter and I were fine. They were very, very sweet, but he kept like looking under the drape, I think, like looking for my placenta, and he was making me nervous. I was like, dude, get away. Like, stop looking under there. So eventually I just said, like, just give me a second, and then I pushed it out. I'm like, there, it's out. Okay, we're good. Like, stop looking under the drape.
Ask first. Like,
Yeah, no, I think he wanted to make sure I wasn't like hemorrhaging. I mean, but it just made me nervous that someone was going to do something, you know,
sure.
start like tugging, or I don't know, tugging on the cord, or doing anything. So, but yeah, so it just, the cord just clotted and she was okay. And then we went to a nearby hospital that had a good NICU, but we didn't need it. So, and I was out, 24 hours later.
How you had mentioned that being an opera singer helped you with the experience. How did it do that?
Yeah. So I think it helped in a couple of ways. I think labor, at least for me with the precipitous labor and doing it in the car and not having any assistance, it was really a mental game of staying calm and being able to focus my energy. And I knew that if I started freaking out, mentally or, physically, just like screaming or doing any kind of high pitched, like tensing up, that it was going to make everything worse, for me, for my husband, just my daughter, like everything just would have been worse. So I really tried to focus on, breathing and just not freaking out, which I know it's a little vague, but just as an opera singer, you know, you're performing in front of huge audiences, you know, tons of music, often in different languages, you know, lots of memorizing, and there's a lot at stake. Like, you have to do a good job and be on it. So just like, you know, any athlete or where it's high stress and you have to perform, you learn how to focus your mind and how to channel that energy. And I think I was able to do that just because I've been in situations like that over and over and over again as an opera singer. So I think the mental aspect was one. And then the second aspect of being able to do slow exhales, of breathing in through my nose and then just and slowly exhaling, relaxing my jaw. Those are all things that I do as a singer. Just lip trills of, again, with the slow exhale, low moans. You know, I'm a contralto, so just lots of not high pitched screaming. It all just worked.
Well, and I love that you've had so much practice doing these things that are exactly what you need for labor, because they help, like all that deep breathing and slow breathing helps keep your nervous system calm and keep you in that oxytocin producing state.
Yes.
And then, yeah, and then the focus is, I mean, that's what labor land is all about, is being in that zone. Like, your body's primed to that moment, help you get into those deeper focus moments. So the fact that you had all this experience already with it.
Yeah. And then,
so much.
yeah, I think also just mentally knowing that if I did start freaking out, it was going to hurt more, you know, the fear pain cycle. Like, I knew that. And I knew, as you said, like with the nervous system, I knew that staying calm was going to be my best bet. So I just felt like that I just had to. So
yeah. Luna says, this story gives me chills. It does. And then Dana had a question on, do you have any remorse for not being able to have your birth team with you and do the things you might have wanted to do during labor, like the tub, the birth ball, all those things?
I wouldn't say remorse. I would say, like, you know, laboring in a car and giving birth in a car is a lot. So I don't like, you know, I think it would have been lovely to be in a tub and have some counter pressure and my doula and my midwife and, you know, a Doppler to check my daughter. Like, all of that would have been great. But honestly, like, there's so many, you know, labor can go so many different ways. So for me, like, having a fast, efficient labor, I think, especially as a VBAC and not having too much strain on the scar, you know, not being in labor for, you know, 48 hours or, you know, 72 hours, or like a super long stalling birth where I have to, you know, they have to give me Pitocin, or, you know, like, I feel like it could have gone so many different ways. So rather than looking at what I didn't have, I try to look at it in terms of, like, she was in a great position. You know, I was early. So she was, you know, 6 pounds, 10 ounces, which, you know, people birth big babies all the time. Like, you know, I was going to birth this baby no matter what. Like, she was going to come out even if she was bigger. But, you know, she was smaller. She was in a great position. Her, you know, as I mentioned, her chin was tucked. Like, she was right there. And she came out, you know, I was able to just listen to my body. I had no one telling me what to do the entire time. And I was able to just focus and be inward and listen to myself. And she flew out in one contraction. Like, there was no prolonged pushing stage. I didn't tear at all, which, like,
right?
Amazing. Yeah. The opposite of this is, you know, like, it was like very nice to not tear. So, you know, and I got my unmedicated feedback, which was what I wanted. And even more than the unmedicated feedback, I think I just wanted to be able to be in control of the situation. And I wanted to be able to um, listen to my body and go through, the natural hormonal changes that happen and like have that oxytocin flowing and feel that rather than, with the birth of my son, although it was lovely, because I wasn't in labor, it did feel very planned. It felt very like I made a reservation for brunch and I go in and I have brunch and then, I leave and it was great. But I wouldn't say that the birth of my son was exciting. It was wonderful and I love him and it was great, but it wasn't exciting
Well, and this is, I
physically.
mean, just that being able to experience all those sensations, it's such a transformative thing of whenever are you going to go to those places, right? Like it is that unique opportunity of exploring again to find out a lot about yourself, which I think you did, of how strong and amazing and fabulous you are, and have that confirmation maybe that birth works when you had it didn't for your first birth.
Yeah, and I think that was part of why it was so frustrating the first time around because I really felt like I could do it, which you never know, if there's always that like, well, who knows? But I just felt like I could push out a baby and I like wanted to do it. And then when I couldn't, I was like, okay, next time I'm gonna push out this baby.
You sure
Um,
did.
so yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would look at a situation um, of giving birth in a car is like horrific and traumatizing. And like, weren't you screaming? Wasn't your husband freaking out? Like, thinking of this, like, we're all screaming, we're all screaming. And, there's like 911 comes and I'm on my back and they're like screaming at me to push. And just, it really wasn't like that. Like, I thought we were still going to make it. I felt the head and I said, there's a head, there's a baby. And she was there. And it was just like, I remember thinking like, oh, good, that's over. I did it. I'm done.
And I love normalizing that it's not like an SNL skit, right? That it is something that can be so focused and control and just connected and matter of fact. And
Yeah.
having people hear that perspective shift. Because when I've had other clients that have had precipitous births, they feel like even when we have this conversation postpartum, that they can almost like finally confide that it was a fantastic experience because everybody around them is bringing fear into it or saying, oh, how lucky you were that nothing went wrong.
Yeah. I think like probably like 95%, I'm putting my birth story out there and there was an article written and there was a little local news story and I'm putting it out there to hopefully inspire people and, specifically like you know, VBAC parents. But it's sorry, my brain is I'm 4 weeks postpartum, so my
Postpartum,
brain's
yeah,
not
there's
working.
that.
What was I saying? So yeah, I mean, I'm putting my story out there, and with that comes judgment. Um, so I think like 95% of the feedback I've been getting is like, wow, you're a rock star, that's great, congratulations. But then there's always that like, how terrifying, I'm so glad you're all alive, like how terrible that must have been, like, are you okay, like, was your husband freaking out, it kind of goes down that rabbit hole and like, thank God nothing happened.
Hmm.
And yes, like, of course I'm grateful that I'm alive and like I'm grateful that my daughter is also fine and like we're fine. But I think, not to diminish my experience, but people give birth all the time. Like, I am not necessarily unique as a human. And, like, it's been happening forever. And people give birth in all sorts of places, and birth happens all over the place. And it just like so happened that mine was in a car and I wasn't freaking out. So I guess that's like something to to be, that's like inspirational, but people do it all the time. So it's not, I don't think that my story is necessarily super unique, if that makes sense.
And I think if people hearing this story, if this story helps anybody to feel less fear around birth, because that's the problem. We bring so much fear into birth and think that being in a hospital is going to somehow ward off all evils, when that's not the truth. Birth, there's no guarantees in birth, like there's no guarantees in life, but it is very much biologically designed to work, and physiology happens. And like you're saying, people give birth in all kinds of ways. I think it's something like 52 people give birth every minute around the world, like something enormous like that, right?
Yeah, someone's giving birth in a car right now, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm sure too. More than one car.
Yeah.
Dane Suarez, the real Dane Suarez, says, but at the end of the day, crazy things happen on stage and you were prepared to go with the flow. And Karen says, new opera all about birth, so many vocals.
Yes. So Karen and Dane are both of my friends, and they're wonderful and amazing. Karen was my friend who I was texting with, who told me, like, girl, get in the car. What are you doing? And she also has a baby, so she was up at night. We were texting. And Dane's also an opera singer, so he understands all the breathing aspect of it, although he has complex child.
He won't have to put it to use in that way, at least.
Yes.
Dana says that's a wonderful perspective. I think she asked about if he didn't regret the feeling. So,
yeah.
And then the praying doula said, that's incredible. You didn't tear. You're a boss at listening to your body. Love your story. You're amazing, Em. You are more educated about birth than anyone I know. How do we get more information out to pregnant women? We do things like this. Listen to the Birthful podcast. Read all the things. Eliminate the fear. And it says Karen, and Dan says, love you.
Yeah, I think, thanks guys. It's very sweet. I think, it's hard. I think some people just think, well, you can't plan birth, like there's no planning in birth, so just do nothing. And I think that, like, of course you can't, your body's your body, the baby's the baby, like every birth is different. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But I think preparing your mind and your body and your soul and educating yourself about all of the different options, so that if you are thrown a curveball, which you will be, because that's just like how birth goes, you can make an informed decision. And if, you do have a provider who's saying, we really suggest X, Y, and Z, you can think, okay, well, what's the evidence of X, Y, and Z? And, is this something I want to do? And you can go through and decide if that's what you want to do. And I think not just throwing your hands up in the air and being like, well, what will be, just sometimes that works out and that's great. Congratulations. But I think a good portion of the time you may have had a better experience, maybe a better postpartum experience if, you did know that you could have more control over the situation.
Yeah. I have an upcoming episode with Dr. Stephanie Mitchell, who's Dr. Midwife on Instagram. And we talk about birth. Yeah, we talk about birth plan. And I love, she said it in such a brief. She said, you come in with no plan, then no plan is our plan. We will give you what we give. So no plan is our plan. If you don't like that, then you gotta, inform yourselves and know your options. Louise says, yes to knowing your options. Amazing story. And thank you for the Birthful podcast from Ireland. Hey, from Ireland. And Dana said, well said. Indeed. I want to, thank you again for coming on to share your story. Congratulations on that. Being able to feel all those feels when you didn't get to feel them and wanted to the first time around. And is there anything you want to leave people with before we close?
I'll just say, like, in the end, I mentioned this, but, birth happens everywhere. And I think birthing babies is a natural process. And, sometimes we need medical assistance, and it's amazing that it's there. And, but most of the time for like low intervention births, I think things go well, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be an emergency every time. And I didn't plan on birthing in a car, but I think what what matters most, with a C-section, with, a car birth, with a VBAC, with a, first time parent, like no matter where you are, I think just the main thing is knowing what your options are and always having informed consent for everything that happens, and that this is your birth and your body, and you can say no to anything that you don't want, and you're hiring them, the providers, and they're there to help you and ensure the safety. And as you mentioned, there are good outcomes and bad outcomes, and in every type of birth, no matter what it is. And no matter what birth you end up having, I don't think that a vaginal birth is like the end all be all. And I don't think that, just because my second baby came out vaginally means that like I'm a superhero and like, here we go. I think that, what really matters is how you feel about your birth, and if you were respected during the process, and if you had a good experience, and you had your wishes, and desires taken seriously, and again, informed consent, like whether that's with a C-section or, with a vaginal birth, unmedicated, medicated,
So much yes to all of that. Yes, absolutely. That you feel heard and supported and loved and have a say, and your rights are not taken away, whatever the experience, for sure. And can we say it louder? Like, most of the time birth works, right? We have so much fear around it, but truthfully, it works. So thank you for sharing the story. Thank you to Rosemary for, oh my gosh, I saw the other thing. She was born May 15th, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my birthday. Like, how weird.
Oh my God.
We share birthday. Yes.
That'll be so fun.
Yay.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. And that was my 50th birthday. So yeah.
Great.
So good. So good. Life of a Grooming Mama was asking when the podcast episode will be out with Dr. Stephanie, and that's going to be the next provider episode. So you know how we do birth stories and then providers, and birth stories and providers? It's going to be that. Oh, and I should have said this at the beginning, my brain. Super important news for you guys. Next week, we are having a big change of things, a big launch. And so our shorts are now going to be part of Birthful Plus, which is going to be, next week I'm going to do a couple of lives to tell you guys. So once Monday at 1 p.m., come back and we'll talk all about this Birthful Plus and what that means. And then Tuesday at 1 p.m., I'm going to be talking about Mama Preparada, which is, this is so big for my heart, podcast in Spanish. Yay. So, come back Monday. You'll see, follow us. And if you're here, follow Birthful Podcast. Monday, I'm doing a live. Tuesday, I know that I'm doing another live with our exciting news for next week. And to close, Karen says, is Karanakin? Is her name Karen?
Karen, and then it's her last name. Yeah.
Okay. So Karen, I've been mispronouncing your name the whole time. I'm so sorry. But she says exactly most of the time. It works. Yay, birth. And there we are. Thanks so much, Emily, again.
Yay.
And
thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.